our amazing panel. So we're going to start with Maya Hazel. She's the Global Head of Diversity and Inclusion at White & Case. Following 7 years of law practice at Simon Thatcher and Bartlett LLP, she led diversity and inclusion and career development initiatives for over 15 years. Maya received her BA from Yale University and JD from Georgetown University Law Center. She is also a certified graduate of Accomplishment Coaching and ICF accredited leadership coaching training program. So that is one of our first people that we're going to introduce. The next person we're going to introduce today is Lee Jeremy Britton. He is a recognized coach, counselor, and corporate professional. He specializes in helping individuals identify and work through obstacles that stand in the way of reaching their goals, has facilitated transformational and healing workshops, and has coached thousands of individuals across the country. Jeremy is the co-founder of Impact, an organization that delivers personal and professional workshops and coaching that supports individuals in creating great results across the board, ranging from finances, education, career, health, wellness, relationships, and community impact. Let's welcome Lee. And last but not least, we have Tiana Tate. Tiana is the founder of Tiana Lavelle Coaching, which was born in 2019. She's dedicated to helping others unlock their highest potential, come up with effective solutions, and combat anxiety and depression, and ultimately encouraging them to shift their mindsets to manifest the life that they want. So I'm excited to be able to facilitate this panel with these amazing individuals. And before we get started, we're going to start with our first poll for the evening. That should be coming up on your screen, so please respond. We're going to give about 60 to 90 seconds for you guys to respond, and then we are going to get started. I'm inclined to sing the Jeopardy song. Okay, we hope everybody has had an opportunity to respond to the poll. Okay, so we have a good amount of people who actually answered no. So we're going to get to the list of questions, but if I could pivot really quickly to Maya and just have her to just give us a little overview of the difference between the three, just so that it frames the context for the rest of the panel and people are clear about what we're sharing with them.
Sure, I'm happy to do that. Good evening, everyone. I'll start with a mentor. I think a mentor relationship is most familiar to people. We have mentors who welcome us in new positions, new organizations. There's typically a buddy program as part of your orientation. And a mentor is simply someone who knows more about a situation, an organization than you, that you're new to, and they're a person that you can go to. A mentor has answers for your questions. A coach is different. A coach has questions for your answers. A coach asks you very powerful questions about your goals. What are you up to in life? A coach helps you be very connected to your being, your most powerful sort of essence, and helps you kind of get out of your own way in accomplishing what's important to you. And the coaching relationship is different than therapy. It's not typically backward looking as you would with a therapist. It's only backward looking for a short period in order to move you forward in your career. It's also, it's not consulting. You go to a consultant who has expertise in your particular area of interest. So Serena Williams has a tennis, kind of coach consultant. That's a different kind of coaching than a coach who is just focused on you, what you're about, what you're interested in. A sponsor is different. The differentiation between a mentor and a sponsor: a mentor, you hear what they have to say about you when you're in the room. A sponsor, they're talking on your behalf. It's about what they have to say about you when you're not in the room. And they are serving a very specific role in helping you meet your goals. Sponsorship is a strategic alliance between a highly motivated top performer who is a sponsee or protege, and usually a more senior and more powerful person, the sponsor, who's capable of helping that sponsored person advance his or her career or other goals, including through career enhancing work assignments, promotions, new job opportunities, and exposure to the sponsor's influential networks.
So with that framework, we're going to pivot to the first question, and I'm going to throw it out to the panel, and whoever can take a stab at it first, I'm okay with that. So what makes you guys' role as coaches or mentors or sponsors unique, and why do you feel it's important to have on your professional team? So maybe I'll look for Lee or Tiana to take that question.
Awesome. And you can call me Jeremy. That's okay. The preference of the two.
Sure.
And my background is pretty much in coaching and mentoring as a combination of the two. So for me, that's providing advice, direction, support, guidance. And notice I didn't say career direction, coaching, and guidance. And I say that because for me, it's a totality. I approach it from a totality standpoint. It's not just limited to the career space, but really across life. So I try to promote a level of balance and a level of wholeness. So with the mentoring aspect, as Maya said, it's pretty much providing guidance and advice based upon my personal and professional experience and the experience of others as well, and simply looking at what has worked for me, what has worked for others, what didn't work for me, what didn't work for others. And then when I layer the coaching in, for me, it's asking those questions that are going to really make you think, and really to create a space to provide direction and guidance. My particular approach is based upon a style called transformational principles, which are foundational principles that are utilized by individuals all over the world. And it really starts with figuring out the inner stuff, who we are, who our being is, that then transfers to the outer stuff, the results, making those decisions around career, making those decisions around health or whatever it may be. And the reason that it's important for me is because we as human beings, we need solid direction. And then trust me, many times, in my experience, it can be much wiser and way less stressful to learn from the lessons and experiences of others, as opposed to have to touch the fire myself to figure out that it's hot.
Absolutely. Tiana, can you also, thank you for sharing that, Jeremy. Tiana, can you talk to us a little bit about what makes your style unique and why it is important to have you on their team, or for professionals to have someone like you on their team?
I think, good evening, everyone. I think what makes my style unique is that I'm able to help people unlock potential that's already within inside of them. Based on their past life experiences, they may have a barrier up where they can't necessarily see that. So currently, given the light of the whole COVID situation, in my professional world, I'm considered like a recruiting coordinator. However, we're leveraging my coaching experience to help build out different parts of employee engagement, mental health awareness, and wellness practices for the team. So these are things that's important about just leveraging different resources that I may have with my style of coaching, where I'm able to kind of funnel those things out for different members of my team and ultimately for the firm. And I think when you're thinking about unlocking potential just for leaders in themselves, is understanding that every employee has different skill sets and different strengths, and giving your employee the opportunity to leverage those strengths in the work setting is important to have on your professional team, because with all of those resources combined, you're creating not only a dynamic team, but a dynamic firm as well.
And Maya, I don't want to exclude you from this question. Can you talk to us about what you do, or your style of mentorship, coaching, or sponsorship, and why it's necessary?
I would say my style of mentorship and sponsorship is very dictatorial. I think my mentees and proteges know I'm going to give it to them straight and have some strong views. And it's why I'm so challenged by and absolutely am passionate about coaching, because that's actually not appropriate. In coaching, I've got to lead them to their own, they've got to get to their own views and solutions. And Jeremy hit the nail right on the head. It's about a holistic approach to kind of life and leadership coaching, and it's all interrelated. So you really are doing powerful listening and powerful asking of questions. I should do the least talking in my coaching relationships versus mentoring and sponsoring relationships.
That's great stuff. Great stuff. And as we're listening to this, thinking about needing, because they don't do the same thing, because a coach is not a mentor and a mentor is not a sponsor, thinking about the necessity to have at least 2, hopefully 3 of these components on our professional teams. And for those that are not clear, your professional team is almost like your personal board of directors, right? Who are the people that are connected to you that make navigating life and career and everything in between manageable. So I want to throw this out to the group again. At what point in someone's career is that professional team necessary? When does that become important, and when should they start building that?
I think
Immediately.
Yeah, agreed. I think as soon as you take that first interview, you should automatically be building your professional team. Whether it's you're at a networking event, you keep whoever you network with, you keep them in your back pocket, you keep that relationship going, because you never know how they're going to help you navigate as you continue to grow professionally. I have mentors from high school that I'm still in contact with who have helped me continue to grow within my professional career. And each level, I continue to, for lack of better words, collect mentors, because there's a mentor for different aspects of that. So I think instantly, you always want to make sure you have your network constantly growing, and that you have people that you can confide in, even if it's just how to navigate professionally, even if it's a mentor that's just helping you navigate adversity as you continue to grow professionally, or even in your own personal life. So I think immediately, as soon as possible.
Any other thoughts? Anything that Tiana didn't cover that you guys want to share?
I think that hit it on the money. The only thing that I would add to that is I agree, as early as possible. And with that, it's never too late as well. So if you find that you weren't on the early half of that, of starting your, your personal board of directors coming out of college, or even starting in high school, and you find yourself in your 30s or 40s, you can do it now.
And I love that Tiana used high school as an example, because I was just going to say my 16-year-old is developing all 3 of those, right? She has mentors in the activities she's interested in, and she's now learning to be a mentor in her, Fempowerment club at school. I'm working on getting her a time management coach, because she likes to take her sweet time doing everything. So I see a need for a coach. And finally, starting to build the relationships to have future sponsors, right? If you are going to intern this summer with Uncle Rich, who's in a powerful position at KIPP schools, you have to do a really good job for that week, because 20 years from now, you will go to him for a reference, and he'll say, yes, I've known her since she was 16, and she did a great job even as a 16-year-old doing X, Y, and Z.
I actually agree. I think many of us don't think about that stuff until we get into work, unfortunately, and get into a hard spot at work. And then we start thinking about what does it mean to have those coaches and mentors and sponsors. So I think it really is important to start as early as possible. So what is the secret to success for each of you in the work that you do as coaches, mentors, and sponsors? If you had to identify one ingredient in the secret sauce, because I know there are multiple layers to it, but what would that ingredient be in guiding your success in your roles?
Well, I can answer that. For me, it's really taking an interest, like a sincere interest in the person that you're coaching or mentoring or sponsoring, finding out what's important to them, what makes them tick, really taking the time to see who this individual is, see what their challenges are, see what their fears are, and then pushing them to a level and holding them to a standard to which they may not even be able to see themselves. With that, the other component of truly seeing who they are as an individual is realizing that mentoring, coaching, sponsorship isn't a one-size-fit-all type of thing. You can't use this formula to work with this individual or that individual, but actually really taking the opportunity to see what this individual needs.
Great response. And I think the idea of stretching people, kind of getting them past what they see themselves doing is a really great, important part of those relationships. Tiana, what's your secret sauce? What's the thing that you bring to the table that's a little different? Or one of those components? Because again, I know it's layered.
A lot of what Jeremy said, but I will say personally for me, it's really seeking God's counsel. I pray before I have a session with the client, because the client is looking to you as someone that they could be vulnerable with, someone that they trust, and they're unpacking a lot of different things that they didn't even know probably existed within them. So before I'm working with the client, I want to make sure that they feel that that faith is there, that there is that level of trust that's there, and that they're in a safe space to be vulnerable. And I want to make sure I'm asking the right questions, because we have a responsibility of asking those hard questions or questions that might be challenging, but
right.
also want to take into account that some of the questions and things that may come up can be very triggering in a good or a very bad way. So you want to make sure that firstly for me, I want to make sure that I'm asking God to give me the right questions to make sure I'm effectively helping this person to the best of my ability, and that they are truly getting something out of our sessions in our relationship.
And Maya?
I think for me, it's three factors. Deeply empathetic. I cry at a Hallmark commercial at the drop of a dime. And so I've been told that I have a very good being for coaching, because I can kind of very deeply connect with people and want to encourage. And connected to that, I have a real passion for helping people do career strategy. My family says I'm just bossy and I like to tell people what to do. That's true. But I also, it's like a puzzle to me. When someone presents an issue, I immediately start thinking like, okay, have you learned this? My brain just kind of goes there, and I want to be of service. My passion, my mission in life is to be of service. And I think the third thing is, I didn't even realize this until much later, because if you were to ask me, I'd say, oh, I hate networking. I'm at best an ambivert, but
right.
not an extrovert. I'm not that comfortable, but I actually am a real chatty Cathy. I have figured out later in my career that I'm quite a powerful connector. And it's part of that liking to strategize and like fix the puzzle. If someone presents something to me, I'm like, oh, well, who do I know who could help with this, and this, and kind of provide that to people. But I think the difference with sponsorship is you have to know who's worthy of being connected with certain contacts to get from point A to point B.
So I think we are up for another poll before we get into our next set of questions. This has been really, really good stuff. I'm taking notes over here too. So if you see me looking down, that's what I'm doing. But we're going to pause for a second and take our next poll question.
I'm loving the music. It's like,
okay, we got full music going on.
Last night.
This is a whole vibe. Okay. I hope you guys have had enough time to get a little vibe in and to respond to the poll. So maybe we can pull up the results and see. So a few people are missing coaches. So it looks like people have mentors, but don't have coaches and sponsors. Aha. Okay. So here's what I will say, because the next question talks about how those roles have influenced professional growth, but it seems like what people are missing is the coach and the sponsor. If we can maybe pivot to focus that question on how has mentorship and sponsorship, how has coaching and sponsorship influenced all of your professional growth? Because it seems like people understand that they need a mentor. I feel like people are on the fence with coaching and maybe didn't even really understand sponsorship or utilize it. So how has coaching and sponsorship specifically helped you guys navigate your careers and helped your professional growth? Maybe we'll start with Tiana.
Coaching has definitely helped my professional growth. So the firm that I work for now, my coach, she was actually one of my interviewers. And when I started there, she took me under the wing. And she literally taught me how to navigate corporate America as a Black woman. It was my first corporate America job, and I was very nervous. I did not know how to navigate that environment. And she would ask me, I would be so upset with her. I would come to her and I would tell her things that are happening that I didn't feel was fair. And she would ask me those hard questions. She would ask me, are you speaking from a place of empowerment? Or are you speaking from a place of victim energy? And I was like, what does that mean? And she really was pulling things out of me. And she continued to do that and continues to do that because I'm still at that firm, and she continues to be a coach to me. She's an energy coach outside of work, and she really introduced me to the world of coaching, and she continues to be that beacon and that resource that I can go to when I am having questions or dealing with things that I don't necessarily know how to navigate myself. She helps me unlock that. So it's been amazing for me.
Good stuff. And I think those are, I don't like to beat that horse to death, but I do think that when we say as women or as women of color or as people of color, sometimes those relationships are helpful because one, the representation may already be low, but two, when you get there, there is that feeling initially of awkwardness, unworthiness, imposter syndrome. Those things are real. They exist. And having somebody come and just validate or even challenge you to get past that part is really, really important. Lee, can you tell us a bit about how coaching and sponsorship has influenced your success? What does that look like for you?
I'm glad that you spoke about you mentioned worthiness. When I think about the coaches that I've had, they ask those questions that really hit here. I truly believe in order to be successful or really to be successful and really enjoy and experience it with the external things, you have to start here. And they asked me those questions that made me look at myself in the mirror and look at that conversation of worthiness and look at that conversation of enoughness and see where it stemmed from. I got a chance to look at my relationship with vulnerability based upon the challenges that they put in front of me, the things that they had me look at. Maya mentioned earlier, being a crier. I wasn't a crier, but my coaches had me crying in tears. I remember calling my best friend and saying I have vulnerability issues, and then I was able to
come on and get that cry on and get it.
And I was able to see exactly how it was holding me back in my career, in my relationships, just across the board. And once I was able to really look at that and bring those things to the forefront of my consciousness, I was able to start making different decisions that led me from a place of holding back, and not going for it due to all of these things, to actually stepping into, the career position that I was meant for really stepping into my purpose.
And Maya, how has it helped you? And I know you alluded to a little earlier, but if you could talk about the coaching and sponsorship component, how has that helped you in your career? How have you benefited from it?
Tremendously. I would say sponsorship from the beginning of my career and coaching in the last 6-7 years. With sponsorship, I had an attitude that made me worthy of sponsorship. Was really took initiative, asked questions, intellectually curious. I remember being in the office with my office mate when I was practicing law, and I had just gotten an assignment from one of the partners I work with. And my office mate said, if I was a partner, I would love giving you an assignment. You're just super positive, like no problem. I can definitely get it done. Thinking about making the person's life easier that I was working for. And also that I had a role to make that person look good. To make myself look good by doing a job to the best of my ability, but also to make them look good, such that, the relationships I formed when I started practicing in 1998, I could still call on those people many years later when I decided I no longer wanted to practice and I wanted to do something different. I still have those folks as part of my board of advisors, and they absolutely sponsor me. With respect to coaching, life-changing. Coaching has absolutely changed every aspect of my life, and I cannot recommend it more highly to anyone to make the investment in getting a life leadership professional development coach. The way that you are able to learn how to come from your most powerful essence in everything you do and move past some of the survival mechanisms that so many of us adopt from a very young age based on messages we have told ourselves and others told us that have really are hampering us in ways that we're not even present to, and impacts our thinking. And the way a coach can very powerfully push that back and help you see far more clearly, such that you can be far more powerful in anything you set out to do, is tremendous. And it's why I spent the time to invest in coaching, because I realized I was doing a lot of mentoring and even sponsoring of the young associates of color and women and LGBT associates who I was trying to help. But I felt like a conversation was missing. Like I could mentor them about how to navigate this industry and be successful, but there seemed to be a deeper conversation and need that they had to really do their best and be as powerful as they could be. And that's when I trained as a coach and very much deepened the conversation I was having in my work now.
Yeah, I think, and because I do coaching, I think one of the questions I love is, so how is that serving you now? Because to your point of those survival kind of like tactics, the things that we did, there are things that literally, even when I look at myself, that I know it was necessary then. And sometimes we take then necessary and we bring it into now and it's sabotaging us. And so I constantly am asking, my client will be all worked up and I'm like, so how is that serving you? And there'll be that moment of like, right. But I think that's the importance of coaching. I love that you said investment, because, you know, the work that is done in the coaching space, a lot of times while mentorship may be something that someone does kind of organically, sponsorship, coaching may have to be the thing that you dig in your wallet, that you carve out some space in your budget for to really make that investment. So I really, really love the answers that you guys have shared, and pivoting from those responses. If I could just next ask, what are some of the things in you guys' coaching relationships that you've done? And I'm going to point this one to Tiana. What are the things that you've done that are successful? And what are some of the things that you found to be, yeah, that doesn't work? We're going to leave that right there. What are some of those things in your coaching experience?
I'll share a couple things. The first thing is that you have to accept the person for who they are and where they are, and understand that you're there to not change anyone. You're there to encourage a change in attitude and behavior. That's one. Two, you have to respect the other person's model of the world. That was something that I particularly struggled with. I am very opinionated. And I had to learn how to understand another person's model of the world, even if I don't agree with it. Because coaching is a complete non-biased, non-judgmental environment. And I had to learn that and understand that. The third thing is understanding that all things are possible with the right attitude and with the right strategy. So as a coach, being successful is allowing your client to have for me, just creating that environment of possibilities. Nothing is off the table. So anything that you feel like you want, you have all of it inside of you to get it. Now we just have to get this strategy going and figure out how we're going to get you from point A to point B. Things that are not successful, it may sound weird, but like advice giving. A lot of people have even reached out to me like, well, you're my friend and you're a coach, I need some advice. I'm like, do you want me to coach you or do you want me to be your friend and give you advice? Those are two different things. So advice giving is not successful because oftentimes we may give advice based on our own experiences and our own biased opinions on a situation, and that may not necessarily be what that person needs. And lecturing is not about teaching a lesson, it's not about lecturing. Coaching is really asking the questions that your client may not necessarily ask themselves. We're here to listen. We should be, as Maya said, doing way more listening than talking. So lecturing is the total opposite of what coaching is. So those two components wouldn't necessarily make for much success.
And from a mentor perspective, and thank you, Tiana, for sharing that. I agree 100%. It's almost like if you're having that moment with people and they're asking kind of for the answer, that really is the shortcut, right? Like the idea is that most of the epiphanies that we have and the empowerment that comes through coaching is in the work. Like they're actually empowered through the process. So when they call and just say, tell me what to do, it's like, no, that's not what we're here for. And similar, I guess, and I'm not, while there's some divergence when we think about mentorship, and I'm going to pivot over to Jeremy Lee, but we're going to pivot over to him and talk about the mentorship relationship. How do you think about mutually beneficial mentoring relationships? Because we've talked about what works and doesn't work from the coaching space, but what works and doesn't work in the mentor-mentee space? How do we make that as mutually beneficial as possible?
I think the biggest thing is for the mentee or the mentor to come from a place of humility. We all can learn from one another. Whether I've been in a space for 10 years, whether I've been in a space for 5 years or 15 years, I think we can learn from one another. And once we get to the point of considering ourselves an expert, my experience is we get to that point where can't nobody tell us nothing. And for me, as a mentor, even as a coach, I find myself learning from those who I've mentored, those who I have coached, and even, to this day, some of the people that I call on regularly for, if I have questions, if I need that coaching, are people that I literally mentored or coach. So just being at a place of humility, recognizing that just as much as, I can offer you, you can offer that to me as well, and being in the place to receive it.
So, and I think that part of the mentor-mentee relationship, I've dealt with people who talked about mentors that wanted to be chased almost, where like the mentee is kind of always working to be worthy of the mentorship, and they're seeing that as a self-value. And I do think those relationships get hard to maintain, because I definitely know that you can't be the mentee that's always waiting for the mentor to reach out and check on you all the time. But really creating those like symbiotic relationships is really important, because the mentees can get lost if the mentors are using this as a reason to feel important and valid. So that is an amazing point. And this is going to take us into our final poll for the evening. So we're going to wait for the poll to come up. I'll see if we get surprised with some background music for the poll as well. And I'm pretty sure I did peek at the Q&A, although the Q&A is not part of my wheelhouse. But I did see that one of the questions was about this. So hopefully when we get to this part, it'll answer some questions. Okay, I hope everyone has had enough time to respond to the last poll. And we're going to see those results. So we see that it says 2% of organizations have sponsorship programs, 31% do not, or about 31 people, 66% do not, and 32% do not know. So this question is going to be extremely important. So maybe we take our time on this question. But so the next question really is, and I guess maybe we pivot this question a little bit, but not just exploring the opportunities within our organizations, because that was really how the question was originally framed, and I'm pointing this one at Maya. But if we don't have those opportunities in our organizations, how do we think about just creating those spaces for sponsorship and mentorship? So how do we explore them in our organizations? And if they don't exist, or we don't know about them, how do we figure that out? Or how do we create those maybe external to our organizations? I know that's a heavy loaded question, so I'm gonna pause.
Sure. I'll take a stab at it. I think a lot of organizations have formal mentoring programs because it's seen as part of orientation and engagement and getting a group to be cohesive. I think not as many organizations have sponsorship programs, and if they do, they are reserved for people who are typically very senior and who have been tapped as high potentials who they want to get to the next level. So even if a sponsorship program exists, there may not be a lot of information about it unless you get tapped for it. But that doesn't mean you can't find mentorship and sponsorship organically. I will say, I think it's incredibly important for any organization that says they're truly committed to diversity and inclusion to have formal mentor and sponsorship programs, because it is harder for those in the minority to organically find mentorship and sponsorship, because you're having to do it constantly across difference. And people are all wired with biases, including affinity biases, and they feel most comfortable with people like them, of their background, and those are the people they feel most comfortable in investing in. But when you have a formal program that takes care to match people of color, other minorities with powerful mentors, sponsors, that's what can really move the needle. And so I think in terms of identifying mentors and sponsors, you have to set some goals. You know, what is it that you're trying to accomplish? And who are the types of people who can potentially be helpful? So think about the professional leadership goals you have. Which goals do you need a sponsor to help you deliver on? How would you like that sponsor to help you achieve those goals? Another thing the research shows, a lot of people of color think they might have sponsors when they actually don't. What they have is mentors. They have people who like them and are nice to them and are happy to help them get from point A to point B, but they're not sponsors who are going to put their own brand and legacy on the line and recommend you for opportunities, because it's going to have it's going to reflect on them. And I think that's where a lot of people of color in particular, and women, make the mistake of saying, oh, I only want a mentor or a sponsor who's just like me. First of all, there's not that many of us in a lot of organizations. And so cross-difference, cross-race, cross-gender relationships, finding the people who are powerful, who can open doors for you to make a difference is what's important. Another thing that I really worry about, and I see this in the younger generations, I'm a Gen Xer who acts more like a baby boomer based on my kind of social class background, like very loyal to people, organizations, etc. I see a lot of the millennials and Gen Y, Gen Z folks who really want work life, professional and personal life separation. So want to come in, do the 9 to 5, 9 to 6, and then go, and are not as invested in spending the time cultivating personal relationships at work. And I'm always saying, like, look, that's the default, that you're going to come in, do the job, and do an excellent job. You're wasting your time here if you're not using your time surrounded by people who know more than you to be cultivating relationships so that these people will mentor you and will sponsor you. And we also, finally, I think a roadblock is we're hesitant to express who we really are. Sometimes in the workplace, we don't feel we can or show up as ourselves authentically and let them know, like, yes, I had, church on Sunday and I'm very involved in church, or I had a sorority or fraternity or this, that, and the other thing. We hide the things that we do and that are important to us and that show leadership skills, capabilities, etc., because it's not within the 9 to 5 framework of work, or we assume these people who are different from us wouldn't appreciate it, wouldn't understand. People are not going to really sponsor you, really advocate on your behalf, etc., if they don't know you. They're not going to give you opportunity if they don't have a sense of you, if they can't go 3 or 4 or 5 levels down deep in conversation with you. And so we really miss out by not being our authentic selves in workplace situations where we can find that mentorship in that and that sponsorship. So again, I hope you're in an organization or engaging in places where you have access to those formal programs, but if you don't, you can still get the mentorship and the sponsorship, the coaching that you need.
And I think you kind of started into this, but if you can just follow up with, if someone's looking for mentoring, coaching, sponsorship, what should they be looking for and how can they approach the relationship? And yeah, so if you can give us some summary sense of that, that'd be helpful also.
I think mapping who do you know and then who do your contacts know who could potentially be helpful. and looking for someone who seems that they are interested in sponsorship, that they have a teaching style, they like to give advice, and are encouraging, etc. Though understanding that your sponsors aren't always going to be warm and fuzzy, they're also going to, tell you the hard things that are going to sometimes be difficult to hear. And you need that. You need different types of voices in your personal board of advisors. But again, I think showing someone that you can really add value to what they're about, to what they're up to, right? That you're really going to kind of burnish a sponsor's legacy in an organization, talk well about them as well, give them, fantastic work product, or go out of your way to send them things of interest that will help them in their careers. People don't have to mentor you. They don't have to sponsor you. So what's going to make it worth their while? So showing that you are worth their while, you're worth their time, you're interested in what they are about and want to know more and how they can help, you will absolutely start to develop those relationships.
Okay. Thank you for sharing that. And I think that part, it is important, because when we don't have those organic relationships, like you mentioned, where that just happened due to likeness, or that we remind, I don't remind the white male CEO of his daughter. I just don't, right? So how do we have those relationships that kind of happen? And I think the things that you've shared have been extremely helpful. So we're going to pivot back a little bit, and just maybe if you guys can share some of your experiences. So the next couple questions are about your experiences. So if can you share an experience, and I'll pivot back to Tiana for this one to start us off, an example where you had to end a coaching relationship, or a mentor or a sponsorship relationship. If you can briefly share what happened and why did you have to end that relationship, almost as a guide for people to say what not to do as they're approaching these relationships.
Yeah, to be honest, I haven't really been in a position where I necessarily had to end a coaching relationship or a mentoring relationship. I'll say I kind of outgrew it. So again, I'll take it back to my mentor from high school. While this is someone who's still very important in my life 10, 11 years later, she no longer is my mentor, because my needs now, as the woman I am now, and going into my professional, level as I am now, is not the same from when I was trying to enter college.
Right.
So although she was very helpful to me during that time, and even the beginning stages of my college career, it's now years later, we no longer have that type of relationship, but we're now friends. So I've never been in a position where I had to just hard on say this is not working out. I think I've more so outgrown my mentor at that time.
Lee, what about you? Did you ever have to sever a relationship, either as a coach, mentor, or sponsor? And what was that like?
So for me, I actually had to sever a relationship as a coachee and a mentee. This was someone who I'm forever grateful for, because she shaped my life profoundly. I wouldn't be who I am today if it wasn't for this particular individual, and this was years ago. And it got to a point to where the person that I saw in the professional setting was different than the person that I saw everywhere else. And I do recognize that we are dynamic individuals. We're going to show up differently in different spaces. Sometimes we may just have stuff going on in our lives, but for this particular instance, it was the values that weren't consistent.
Okay.
And, I first saw it, and then when I saw it again and I started to see it consistently, I knew it was time for me to make a decision. And although I would forever be grateful for this individual and forever love this individual, because our values no longer aligned, that's when it was time to take a break from the relationship and do a termination from it.
Okay. And Maya, have you served as a sponsor for someone that you could no longer sponsor?
Yeah.
So can you tell us about that? Because I think for the sponsorship folks, that relationship is a little different, because these are the people who are advocating for us kind of behind our backs. They're talking about us behind our backs. Mm-hmm. So have you ever had to sever that? And you said yes. Can you tell us what led to that and what that was like?
Definitely. really hard for me to do because, again, my orientation is how can I help? How can I be of service? I want to diversify the workplace, the legal profession. So if someone comes to me and says, I need help, my inclination is always to help. But I think there's different levels of help. And I didn't realize I was applying kind of the same standard, like I'm gonna, knock down every door and call every contact if, a young associate of color comes to me and needs help. And I had to realize that not everyone is worthy of that, because at the end of the day, I also have a professional reputation. Yeah. And if someone asks me, hey, this person wants to do this different thing and be considered for this role on my team, what do you think? And I'm like, yeah, they're great, they're a star, I support them, I really want to help them. And then that person goes and gives a very subpar, proposal for what they said they wanted to do that I recommended them for. I have been burned a few times where the person, didn't follow up, didn't make a strong professional presentation to the people I referred them to, just didn't really take it seriously. And with this, and I'll sneak in coaching here, I went to my coach and I was like, that's it. I'm never helping another fill in the blank millennial. And so my coach
said, Don't throw us away.
And my coach said, because I was very in my, entitled and, I'm so right, Gen X mode. And my coach just powerfully questioned me and said, did you tell that person what you expected of them for them to get the benefit of you sponsoring them? I was like, no, should I have to spell that out? Should I have to tell them that? Just like, yeah. Don't assume everyone starts from the same default that you might. Of course I should do X, Y, and Z. They may have a totally different impression that they just want help, you're willing to help, and so they're gonna get what they can get, right? You have to make a decision. If you're going to actively sponsor someone, you need to tell them up front, okay, I am going to sponsor you. Here is what I expect as a result. Is this what you're interested in? Can you kind of handle that? And if so, let's go. So have that conversation before you go all in and then you're hurt and disappointed. I was like, okay, got it.
And guys, we have made it. We have a final question, and we've made it on time, so I'm excited. So we're going to ask this to all the panelists as we wrap this up. What is your advice? What is the thing that you want to leave with the audience who may be seeking coaches or mentors or sponsors? Do you have advice for them? And as they're preparing to maintain their roles as leaders. So it's almost like a leadership lesson and advice for them as they're seeking this next level of support in their careers, coach, mentoring, and sponsorship. So what's some invaluable lesson and advice for them as they're seeking this information? We'll start with Lee. We'll let Lee go first because he's been the second or third person for the whole.
Well, I would say my one piece of advice would be to have multiple mentors, multiple coaches. They may not all be professional coaches. However, given that we do, I believe we should aspire to live whole, balanced lives. Our coaches are going to affect us professionally anyway. So whether you have your career coach or mentor, your spiritual coach or mentor, if you are even a parent, having someone who can mentor or coach you in that aspect as well, being willing to have those different people to step into those roles, because it's going to spill over into your professional life anyway. So that would be the simple thing for me.
So have multiple coaches and make sure you're getting those different areas targeted.
Exactly.
Tiana, what is your leadership lesson and bit of advice for people who are seeking these relationships?
I think the biggest lesson is starting with yourself and asking yourself, are you ready to commit to this process? Because coaching is not a quick fix. Mentorship is not a quick fix. It is an ongoing process, and it's something that over time you will start to see the fruits of the labor you're putting into yourself, along with the coach and mentor who is helping you extract that extract those things out of yourself. So it's about getting through the hard times. Like, can you get through the dips? Can you get through the parts that are really tough? Can you get through the things that you don't necessarily want to face without giving up? And are you willing to do the work? Because it's work, it's hard work, it's not easy work, but you will see the benefits of it if you continue to go through that process. So that's my biggest advice. Like, once you are ready to say that, look, I need a coach, I want a mentor, I may want to mentor somebody, are you ready for that?
So be ready for the responsibility. And Maya, your advice and leadership lesson.
I feel like my co-panelists have covered it. I'm gonna give Shalima a little roadmap for folks who want to be sponsored and kind of, 7 tips on what you should focus on. I think it's very related to Tiana's last point about self-awareness.
Mm-hmm.
And it's why I strongly suggest people get a coach, because it helps you get so clear about who you are and what you want. And that really impacts how you then respond to situations. The biggest lesson I have learned personally and professionally is it's never personal.
Right.
Nothing is ever personal. However, anyone or any situation is coming at you, it has nothing to do with you and everything to do with that person. And it's all about your ability to control your reaction, whether you're going to respond. And the point was made earlier by Tiana very well in an empowered way, where you are at cause and owning your life, or in a victimized way, as she mentioned, if you're at effect of your life and your circumstances. And so to seek to know thyself, seek that self-awareness, and then finding the mentorship, the coaching, the sponsorship will be so much easier and so much more likely to be successful.
Amazing. And if I can add one point, just that I think is important to the leadership lesson, is that leadership is not only tied to title and positionality, right? The idea of leadership is that you have influence to motivate the decisions of somebody else. So babies are leaders. They make you get out of bed. They make you respond differently. They make you do something differently. They're leaders. And so I think one thing that is empowering is to not only see yourself as a leader once you get into a role, or only think of leadership as connected to a certain title or a certain level in the organization. You can influence decisions and outcomes right where you are. And so thinking about that as a leadership lesson, and then using that to establish the relationships you need to move further, but not thinking of yourself as a leader only when you get into the corner office with the little gold thing on your desk, right? You're leaders right now. And so with that, I want to thank the panel. I think we're going to stick around. I know we're going to stick around for Q&A. I'm going to pivot it back over to Deandra to take us into the Q&A session. But if we can just take a moment, I know we can't clap out loud, but if you can throw up something in the comments to just thank our panelists for being so gracious and sharing so much wisdom. And we're going to turn it over to Deandra.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much, panelists, for sharing your wisdom and your advice. It's been an amazing discussion so far, and I'm really excited to open up the questions from the attendees. And I'm also excited to announce that Joy, our lovely moderator, is definitely invited to chime in on any of the questions that she has a perspective to share on. So you guys are getting a 3 for 4 now, or 4 for 3. So our first question is, I think this is a great one. How do you know if a mentee or a client is not the right fit for you, or vice versa, you're not the right fit for them? And once you've determined that, how do you communicate that to that person?
If I can say real quick, this is the importance of a discovery call. So my coaching style is, I'm very straightforward. I'm not extremely colorful. I smile a lot, but that's as far as it goes as it relates to the colorfulness, because I think the work is important and we have to do the work. So initially on the initial calls that I have with people, I do ask 1 or 2 hard questions. And depending on whether or not they're defensive, like there's some things that you kind of can unpack from those initial calls. Some things are just barriers that you have to work through as part of the coaching. But I think that, one, if you're looking for a mentor, social media, go through their stuff, see how they talk, see how they engage people. Is it the style you're looking for? Are they on a career path you care about? Are there testimonials of other people that have worked with them? So do your research and dig around. And then I think for people who are coaches and mentors, those conversations, that 30-minute, that 15-minute, whatever that is, does unpack a lot. And when I find somebody is not a good fit, I normally will say, I just don't think that, our styles align. And I want you to get the most out of this experience. Can I refer you to, and I have other friends that do similar work, or, here's something I can tell you, and maybe these are some things you should be looking for in someone that's a better fit for you. But I'm okay with letting that go.
Anyone else want to chime in?
Joy completely.
Okay, awesome. Okay, let's move on to another one then. If there was one power word or one word that encompasses what a mentor, or coach, or sponsor, etc., should embody, what would you say that word would be and why? I know it's kind of a toughie I sprung on you guys.
I actually think interest. They have to actually want to do this work. I think it's work to mentor, and it's work to coach, and it's work to sponsor. So it may not be a powerful word, but maybe a descriptor that says, this person should really minimally be interested in who you are as a person, or even what it is that you're trying to achieve, as a means of keeping them engaged with the outcomes. I'm sure there are better power words, but that was just a word that came to my mind. I want somebody that's interested in me and what I'm doing, what I'm trying to accomplish.
I think the only word I can think of right now is purpose. I often tell people I didn't necessarily think I would ever become a life coach. I kind of feel like I was called to do this work. And because of my purpose, I feel like God has equipped me with certain things that allows me to do this work, because it's very deep. It's not always easy as the coach. It takes a lot of stepping out of yourself and making yourself available in this way to someone. So I would say purpose is the only word I could think of right now. I'm sure there's better ones, but.
I think purpose is spot on. If I had to pick another to go with it, I would say contribution. Right now, whether you're serving as a mentor, a coach, a sponsor, you're really contributing, you're pouring into somebody else's life. And I believe we all were put on this planet to contribute to this planet, and knowing that your contribution into this person's life is going to impact the contribution into somebody else's life, is going to impact the contribution into this world. And when I die, I want to know that I've given as much as I can with no regrets, and that individuals coming after me are going to be able to benefit from what I've contributed into this world.
So I hate having to choose one word. It's a combination. I think it's vision and some combination of pushy and fearless, because a sponsor or mentor's coach vision for you is far bigger than the vision you often have for yourselves, and for yourself. And so having someone who can be that powerful mirror, hold up that powerful mirror to say, you are great and you have infinite potential and you can do anything you set your mind to. And when you are doubting yourself and telling yourself, the story I'm telling myself is this, for them to be able to say, that's ridiculous and that's nonsense. And of course you can do X, Y, and Z. And I also love a sponsor, because then they can also pick up the phone and help you achieve that thing. So they've got to be fearless and they've got to be relentless. And I cannot say enough, as much as I've been preaching the Holy Grail around coaching, you cannot be successful in this life without sponsors. Most jobs that you try to apply for, those jobs have already been filled by someone on the inside who had a sponsor who said this person should get this job. It is critical to make sure you actually have sponsors and not just mentors, and the right sponsors, and that word for them, just fearless, relentless on your behalf.
Thank you. That was an amazing answer from everyone. We can really feel your passion for the people that you are taking on in these roles. It's really kind of just like jumping out of the screen, making this way more engaging than, you know, the typical Zoom panel is. The next question is, how do you maintain a relationship when you don't necessarily need that person in that moment? I know a lot of you spoke about having those relationships that you either grew out of, or like Jeremy, you spoke about the your values no longer aligning. So pulling on that personal experience, how do you maintain that relationship in its new form?
I think it was pretty easy because you grow to really care about your mentor for the most part. Maybe not for everyone, but there's a separate relationship where that person could be like your coach, but outside of them being your coach, they can also be your friend. So the way I'm going to interact with you as my homegirl may not be the way I interact with you as a coach. So I think it's, for me, it's been kind of easy like to separate the two. Once that coaching dynamic or mentor dynamic is out of it, now we're just friends. I don't know if that makes sense, but that's the easiest way for me to explain it.
I think that's awesome. I would add to that, it's just having a genuine concern for the person. I know, you know, the world we live in can be very transactional at times. What can you do for me? What can you do for the other person? But I actually want to get a chance to know who this person is. And many of the individuals that I've coached throughout the years, we've developed those genuine relationships because it wasn't about just coaching. It's about, who is John? Who is this person? How can I get to know him? So yeah, just having a genuine interest in getting to know who that person is.
I would agree. I'd say staying in touch, staying really curious about what's going on with them. It's been so wonderful to kind of transition former employers who became sponsors, you know, who recommended me for the next opportunities. And as I stay in touch with them, for example, I stay very close. I'm very fond of my former boss at Pace Law School. He was dean of the law school and then went on to become president. And I always made a habit of just staying in touch with him, having his birthday on my calendar and reaching out to him. And he'd say, come meet me at whatever crazy all for white men private club in the city he would invite me to, and we would just connect. And I remember in our last conversation, he's like, I'm 77, I'm never gonna retire, I'm bored to tears. I'm like, well, why don't you become a coach? It's like, what is that? What does that mean? And so I recommended my coaching program to him. To my shock, he did it. And now he has a coaching practice, right? So when I followed up with him, we still have that conversation, but he's still a sponsor for me, right? He's like, when are you gonna get out of law firms? You should be the president of a college. What is that? Why do you see that for me? Oh, you're a leader. That's what you should do next. That's what we're gonna talk about next when you're done with the law firm thing. I'm not even thinking about that, right? So now it's changed, right? It's always that two-way street, that two-way relationship helping. And a very powerful lesson I've learned from one of my mentees, you know, someone I didn't even remember helping when they were a young law student. And he's now in a real position to help me because he's in-house at a bank that is a client that my firm wants to grow a relationship with. So he is actively helping me do that. So you see how these relationships, you keep them and they flip back and forth. And some of the more senior people I know have said it's been shocking to them to understand that some of their best opportunities now, later in their career, are coming from people they mentored, who have all these connections, who are helping them be more tech savvy, everything else. Millennials are great, Gen Y, Gen Z, y'all are great. All the stuff that you teach us in the older generations and connecting us to opportunities now based on what you know. I think it's just fantastic, that symbiotic relationship and the way it flips. But to Jeremy's point, you have to stay interested and curious, genuinely care about the person, and then be diligent about staying in touch.
And I think it's important to remember people who've invested in you care about where you are as well. So for years, and I still do it, you know, even if it was just the holiday time, saying, hey, you know, reaching out for the holidays. Here's what's going on in my world, what's going on in yours. They would appreciate me updating them on my life, that I hadn't just gotten where I could get and then just kind of forgot and left them and went ahead to be great. But reaching back, periodically even saying, you know, as I'm doing this, I remember the conversation we had when I couldn't even see me doing this. So thank you. You know, those kind of things, you don't have to do them every day or every week. You may reach out around birthdays, to Maya's point, like around landmark, hallmark days or whatever. But I think it is important to remember that people are more than their utility. And so remembering people past their utility and keeping connected and grateful for how they have helped you is important.
That was really insightful on behalf of everyone's parts, especially hearing how the roles kind of flip for you, Maya, and this person is now in a position to help you. Definitely something I think that younger people like myself don't necessarily think of.
Absolutely.
Great.
You all have so much power and can be so helpful. Absolutely.
I think another great question that I've seen come through in a bunch of different ways and different ways people asked it is, how do you reach out and cement that mentorship or that sponsorship relationship? People have expressed concerns about coming off too aggressive or not coming off as aggressive enough. Would just love to hear you guys' perspective on the best tactics for that initial approach.
So I'll say really quickly, and then I'll pivot over, but sometimes it's just the conversation. So for example, we were prepping for this. I've kind of adopted Maya a little bit. She doesn't know yet, but we were like getting ready for this, and I'm looking at her bio and I'm like, oh, she's a lawyer. I am in law school. Just striking up the conversation. I didn't necessarily say to her, will you be my, right? We haven't gotten to any place like that. She doesn't know much about me, but being able to just organically have a conversation, talk about interests, see the things that, you know, where interests align. You can kind of interview people who are in other roles and talk to them and show interest in what they do and figure out if they're people you want to engage. And that was literally while we were on break getting ready to go live. So leave no opportunity unturned, right? If you're taking something into somebody's office and leaving it there, you know, if they have a moment where they look up, you can ask them about their day. If you notice something on their, like, there are always these organic moments to have a conversation. And sometimes, unfortunately, and I don't want to say only people of color, but even junior, and when we're junior, we kind of walk around with our heads down and just creeping in and creeping out, and don't take the opportunity to ask the question, acknowledge the football team, acknowledge the alma mater and who you know that may went there. Begin to strike up conversation, and don't just keep your head down and pedal along and get in and get out as quickly as you can. Use those moments for conversation and just organic connections.
And same thing, I read Joy's bio. I'm like, oh, she's going to help me when I'm ready to do this entrepreneur thing, my future consultant life, when I work for myself. Absolutely.
To Joy's point, I'm actually like doing that right now in my current role. My title is technically like a coordinator kind of position, but I know that there's more that I can be doing. Now that we're all working remotely, anything's kind of up for grabs. So I just began asking different members of my team who are more senior just to have a Zoom conversation with me. Like, let's just connect and catch up. And I started expressing different things that I'm interested in, things that I do outside of work. And to my, not necessarily to my surprise, because I felt like this would happen, it opened doors for me to get on different teams at my job. I'm making all of these decisions, and they're asking my opinion on things that I was not necessarily always experiencing in the office. But it's not that it wasn't necessarily there. It's because I was too afraid to go in and have that initial conversation. And out of that, my boss, who's very senior, she's now kind of taken me under her wing to like help me, you know, fix up my resume and become more marketable in different areas. I'm very passionate about diversity and inclusion, and she's been very pivotal in helping me navigate that. And it all came from these initial conversations of like, do you have 5 minutes just to catch up? And it's literally just that simple. And so many doors can open from that.
Yeah, and the only thing, that was all excellent. The only thing I would add, when hearing that conversation, my coaching hat came on, and the first thing I thought to myself was, what would have you think that, you know, you're being too much or you're overdoing it, and then we'll go down that whole thing. But just be extremely intentional. And this is very simple. Be extremely intentional, but don't overthink it. Don't overthink it. Just, if you thought to yourself to, go strike up that 5-minute conversation, just jump into it. Once we start overthinking it and getting in our head and all of that stuff, we start to have these conversations in our heads about how things would go and it won't go. And it can either drive us to the point of not doing it or just doing it with a whole bunch of doing it from a way of being that wouldn't really help the conversation. So just be courageous. If you think of it, don't think too hard and just open your mouth and go for it. Jump right into it.
And just remember, if I could just take a second, y'all are interesting. Like, we're interesting. My last corporate job before I left was at Moody's. And I remember being at work one day and somebody said to me, you're much more interesting online than you are at work. And I realized, like, I was walking around with the proverbial, like, bun pulled back, very unassuming, just, what I was made to believe I had to do in order to climb. And I realized that, like, when I started showing up to work as a human being, like, as a whole person, and did that, I think the doors for people wanting to collaborate, the conversations, different things. You're in school, you hide in it because you don't want people, they're going to think I'm working at my desk. No, people actually care that you're going to school and it's somebody's alma mater. So that opened up a door in my mind to realize that, like, I was actually an interesting human being. I didn't go to work with these on, but I did kind of open up a little bit about who I was and how I showed up. And so I do want to encourage you all to realize that you are interesting and people are interested in you. And sometimes why no one is engaging you is because the person, the imposter, the representative that you're taking to work is not interesting and it's boring and no one wants to talk to that person. They actually want to talk to you. So figure out a way to be authentic, appropriate, but authentic in your workspaces so that people want to connect with who you are.
Yep.
And also remember, be excellent, right? People are attracted to excellence. They want excellent people associated with them, with their brand, working for them. So your work can also speak for you, and it cuts through a whole lot of other things where I've seen lawyers say, I don't care what their voice sounds like. I don't care if her hair was this short today and it's down her back. I don't care. She's excellent. I want her on my transaction. So, striving for excellence will also do a lot.
That was a great bit to end it on, because I think oftentimes, people of color, especially women, have imposter syndrome. They think people aren't noticing what they're doing. They think people aren't noticing their contributions. And just hearing you say that was really, really inspiring, especially coming from a more corporate background where that's something where people are especially worried. So I just had to chime that in there. That was inspiring for me. And on that note, I'm sorry to say that we have time for one last question. I would have loved to sit here all night, being that I'm stuck inside anyway, and listen to the gems that you guys have to drop. But I think that we'll end it out with, and I'd love to hear from all of you across, whether it's a mentee or a sponsee or a coachee, but what are those attributes that make those E roles the roles that you want to have in your life? Like, what makes a great mentee? What makes a great coachee? What makes a great sponsee?
I think what makes a great coachee is just someone who's willing to do the work, someone who's really had that conversation with themselves and they're ready to be vulnerable. It's not necessarily about will they trust you right away, because trust is something that is built over time, but just someone who takes themselves serious enough that even if they have no idea where to start, they have no idea where this is going to take them, they have made an executive decision over their life and saying, like, I am ready to show up and do this work. I don't know how this is going to go, but I am open and I am vulnerable to this process. So anyone who has had that conversation, and even if you're on the fence and you're not really sure how this conversation is going on in your head right now, the fact that you're even addressing it and you want to have that conversation with yourself is enough for me to want to have that 30-minute discovery call with you.
I agree with Tiana. I don't think there's anything else I can add to that. The willingness to do the work, the willingness to jump in and just have it turn out. I couldn't ask for anything else. If you're willing, one thing I like to say whenever I'm coaching in front of the room is, are you willing and are you able? And I'll usually tell a story with it. Most of us were able to do anything, but the question is, are we willing to do what it takes? So I agree with Tiana wholeheartedly on that.
I think, so from the mentor, I've actually been fortunate to be a mentor and a sponsor. And so from the sponsor space, people who show up, there's a young lady who I've been able to refer and kind of walk in 1 or 2 times, and she's always, like, people don't want to let her go. And I think that's really, really important to the relationship. I think in the mentor relationship, what works for me, everybody's different, is someone who's looking to bring value and take value. A person who's only in the relationship like this and just never thinking about how they can support, how they can help. I think reverse mentoring, that's going to become more and more of an issue where, you know, I guess I'm an older millennial. I'm like the oldest millennial. So if you're older than me, you cannot be a millennial anymore, but I'm at the top of it. And even when you look over the range of millennials, there are 24-year-olds who can click this better than I can, navigate it. They're thinking differently about social media. So individuals that come, and even older, you can have mentors that are old. You can mentor people who are older than you. But people who are willing to see themselves as givers and takers and are thinking about, in trade off for what it is that you're giving them, they're being intentional and thoughtful about what they can also bring back in value. I think that's very helpful in those relationships.
I agree with everything that's been said. And I think just distinguishing, remembering again, you can show up anyway, anyhow, and act however as a coachee. Because as a coach, we relate to any coachee as their highest self and their greatness. So whatever mess you are still amazing. And we're gonna get you to seeing that and get out of your own way. In terms of mentees and folks that I sponsor, folks who are self-aware, so you know we've made that point, and also mature, though not perfect. Everybody has a ways to go. Me too. I'm not always mature. I can be better, and that's the point of a mentor and a sponsor, helping develop you so that you get there. But they do what's in their power to do, and they do it well. They don't waste my time, you know, coming in, not having a clear questions, a clear agenda on what they're looking for and what they need. They don't have a sense of entitlement about it. Incredibly grateful for advice, counsel, what I'm giving them. They don't over personalize my advice or guidance, and they're open. They're coachable. They're open to feedback. They're open to coaching. If this is a me fighting you to convince you to take my advice, then then I'm not the right, you know, mentor and sponsor for you. It is what it is. And you can make the decision to not go with some piece of a mentor or sponsor's advice that doesn't feel right, or maybe you adapt it, etc. But if we're in a constant conversation where I'm fighting you to let me help you, no. No.
Yeah, I ain't gonna fight you for your healing.
Well, on that note, we'll be concluding our panel tonight. And thank you all so much for this question and answer portion. It's been really insightful for me, and I hope for the audience as well. And I'll hand it back over to our lovely Vice President, Tasheka, to close out the night.
Thank you, Deandra, and thank you to Joy for moderating and all the panelists. However, before we close out, I would like for you guys to share your business or events that you have coming up. I'm sure you guys are all entrepreneurs or aspiring to be, and so we would like for you to share that information with the audience before we close out.
Sure, everyone. I am Tiana Lavelle. So I have my coaching business, which is Tiana Lavelle Coaching. I am running a 50% off promotion on all of my coaching packages through the end of May. I'm also doing soul talk sessions, which is a little different from coaching. It's more of like a venting session, especially at this time of COVID. We're all quarantined, and sometimes we just need an ear, someone to talk to. So if anyone's interested in that free session, feel free to head over to my Instagram page, Tiana Lavelle Coaching, or my website, tianalavellecoaching.com, to book, and we can set up some time to talk.
And I'll go next. So I am Lee Jeremy Britton, and I am one of the co-founders of Impact which is a transformational company that delivers healing and transformational as well as professional development workshops, really allowing individuals to see what's standing in their way of reaching the goals and results they want in their lives, and giving tools to support and actually reaching those goals. And the one event that I would promote is actually taking place on tomorrow evening. I know for not even many of us, for all of us, our world has been turned around over this last few months. And I know there's desperately need of space for people to, like Tiana said, just to talk, to vent, to say what's on their mind. I know there's been an array of emotions that I've experienced over this last month. So myself and 3 of my colleagues, we are actually hosting a Zoom call on tomorrow, to where you just call in and say whatever is on your mind, and whether it's a piece of, we're going to have a counselor on, we're going to have someone, spiritual leaders, whether you need counseling, whether you need prayer, whether you just need to talk. It's going to provide a space for that. And you can email me at info@IImpactonline. That's info@IImpactonline.com. And I can give you more information about that.
Yeah, I'll go next. So I'm Joy. I am a management consultant, and I also do coaching. My website is joypittman.com. So it's my name, JOYPITTMAN.com. You can find me on every social media platform known to man at Think with Joy. And essentially for the coaching, most of the work that I do in the management consulting space is facing small businesses and not-for-profit organizations, but I do have a heart and a passion for women of color, men of color as well, but I have a heart for women of color. And so I started 2 coaching groups. One is focused on leadership and development coaching for emerging leaders, hopefully to support individuals who don't have those relationships at their jobs. So we do leadership coaching in a group setting with some one-on-one support. And then I also have a group designed to support entrepreneurs or people who are thinking about entrepreneurship. It's called Look Before You Leap. And the goal is to kind of spend a couple of weeks working through really getting your business plan and marketing plan together, so that you don't do what I did. It's been the first year of your entrepreneurship journey trying to figure out what you do. So the idea is that I'm taking all the pain that I went through in that process and trying to help people organize and having, I'm not saying don't leap, but we're going to have you take a look first and make sure that what you're leaping into is something that is sustainable. So if you're interested in either of those, you can reach out to me again, any platform, Think with Joy, email me, joy@joypittman.com, website, joypittman.com. See what we're doing here? A lot of joy going on. But just reach out. Even if you just have a question, everything doesn't require an invoice. If there's a question and you just want to follow up, feel free to reach out. I'm more than happy to assist in any way I can.
Thank you. I am Maya Hazel. For anyone interested in the legal profession, in going to law school, I'm very committed to diversifying the profession. So feel free to reach me on our website at White & Case LLP. If you look under people and just search my name, my information will come up. You can also find me on LinkedIn. I publish a lot, or I'm trying to publish more, writing around the subjects I'm really passionate about in talent management and diversity, and also have a very special place in my heart for students and young professionals. So try to put out content and resources devoted to that. Yes, we are a law firm, but we also have roles other than for lawyers. We are looking for talented professionals of all backgrounds for other functions of the firm, recruiting, learning and professional development, technological services, finance, business development, and marketing. So if you've ever thought of a career at a law firm, I'm happy to answer questions about that. And finally, as we discussed, I am a coach. I don't take on, I have a pretty big day job, so I don't take on personal clients, but anyone interested in coaching, please go to Tiana, go to Lee Jeremy. I am happy to recommend for those interested in pursuing becoming a coach. I trained with Accomplishment Coaching. I thought it was a fantastic program, very rigorous, a year-long gut-wrenching, wonderful experience. So happy to share any advice, resources around becoming a coach or getting a coach.